I love card games. The way they feel in your hands, the rigidity of the cardstock, the immutability of the game pieces as physical objects as you play them. Each card is a little decision that you make by putting it in your deck that blooms into a spiderweb of synergy that folds into itself. A compact Rube Goldberg machine. Most card games I play, I don't even play to win, really. I just want to see the machine run. Winning just ends up being a vague compass of design for the deck to point itself towards, a way to give play structure rather than purpose. I find this beautiful. I also hate card games. It's kind of this horrible thing that I've locked myself into. The amount of money that you need to spend to meaningfully engage with them is so ridiculous, and the way that they're designed to make you spend the most amount of money on them is insidious. They are genuinely evil as things that exist. As products, they are wasteful. As communities, they are almost obsessed with the evaluation of game pieces. It's a completely oh my god. Oh dear god. A cat just blew the take. That was a good take. I'm keeping this in. Don't play card games. As much praise I can lavish onto the game part of trading card games, the trading part takes a hatchet to a lot of people's perspective on them. If you don't know what a TCG is, why are you here? I mean, no disrespect. It's just like a very. You should get out. You should run. You might end up wanting to play one of these. Are you insane? But to put them simply, they're a card-based game that usually has some level of scarcity to promote the trading of pieces between players. To put it a little less simply, cards are sold in randomized packs to further enhance its scarcity. You can't buy these cards that you want directly unless someone rolled the dice on a pack of cards, which creates a level of risk and therefore value. It's artificial value, but it's real enough to make people who produce these games money hand over fist. The secondary market then steps in with these inflated values of desired cards and skims whatever money they can from the people who don't want to gamble. If you've ever interacted with Pokemon cards as a kid, it's basically just that. But take the idea of trading Pokemon cards in a backyard with your friends to a larger economic scale that is significantly more predatory and really does prey upon certain personality types that are vulnerable to grasping on to that randomized loot box-esque feel. In that way, card games are essentially just little slot machines that you play, not just in the way that most of the games have randomized elements, but in their base form in purchase, you have to roll the dice, you have to gamble on these random packs just to play them, or at least someone does. If your takeaway from all of that is that card games sound expensive to play, you'd be completely right. Any given game could ask hundreds of dollars from a player over the course of their entanglement with them. This is generally true for most TCGs, but the range of price can swing wildly from game to game. Games like Netrunner promote people printing their own cards and is largely open source, or at least as much as a paper card game can be open source, but I digress. Meanwhile, modern TCGs can have deck prices that range from as low as $70 to over $500. These two numbers are actually specific, one coming from Magic the Gathering, the other coming from the Pokemon TCG. But, dear viewer, a question, if you would, a quiz. Which one is which? Which card games hold the largest cost? Of these two, specifically. Even if you've been shielded from the card game brain rot, the intermittent frenzy of Pokemon cards often hits the mainstream, with influencers screaming into their mouths are dry about rare pulls, or the sight of scalpers fighting each other over boxes of a children's card game at a Walmart. A vortex of nostalgia and finance bro get-rich-quick schemes that people get whipped up into every few years, centered around the most valuable intellectual property that has ever existed in Pokemon. The answer is obvious. It's not Pokemon, it's Magic the Gathering. For some reason. It's for some reason Magic the Gathering is the one that is the most expensive to play and purchase. That strange, unexpected disparity is actually the reason that I'm making this video now. I primarily play Magic the Gathering. That's an embarrassing thing to say out loud onto the internet, but I guess I've already come this far. The game has rapidly increased in price over the past few years, and recently I cast my gaze at the states of other contemporary TCGs to see if this was some wider issue within the space, and also because I was sort of interested in seeing what those other games held. That's when I checked out the tournament-winning deck lists of Pokemon, and was flabbergasted at the costs. As I said previously, the average deck cost of the Pokemon TCG is around $70. Or I guess I just implied that. I didn't actually state that it was $70. I should have been more specific. It's really cheap to play the Pokemon TCG. $70 is actually the high end for most competitive decks. You could easily build a perfectly playable deck that was capable of winning for less than $50, or even less if you're being more frugal. Only a couple of cards are really expensive in Pokemon, and if you cut those, you could easily get your deck down to, I don't know, sub 30, which is an insanely low cost coming from other TCGs. As a Magic player, the idea that you could play a game so affordable seems completely impossible. And maybe that's due to the cynicism that I've experienced by playing a game that's run by Wizards of the Coast, the company that makes Magic, who have instilled within me an assumption that every company that runs one of these trading card games is just going to make a series of frankly ghoulish business maneuvers. And yet here's Pokemon, one of the most cynically mass-produced capital P product, letting the brokies play card games on the cheap. To put this further into perspective, Pokemon is cheap compared to most other active TCGs as well. Yu-Gi-Oh!, One Piece, all of those have buy-ins of at least $100 to $200. It left me reeling. It also left me looking up a bunch of budget jank decks for the Pokemon TCG because I have the sickness. I can't help myself. Speaking of the Pokemon TCG, it's actually very fun. I mean, I'm probably going to get into the nitty-gritty of some of these games, but Pokemon specifically translates the form of the games into a card game very, very well. I ended up spending a couple of weeks playing Pokemon on the online client, and I was shocked to find that it's also cheap to play digitally, which is completely disparate from Magic the Gathering, which is outrageously expensive to play on your computer or your phone. Again, I didn't understand how it was possible. I needed to know how it managed to be so affordable while still firmly being in contention for the most popular TCG and the most successful financially. And also, why Magic is so much more expensive. And not just compared to Pokemon specifically, but even to its contemporaries. As I said, the buy-in for most card games is about $100 to $200. But for Magic the Gathering, that average shoots up to around $300 to maybe even $400 if you want to stay up to date with any competitive lists. But to answer that question, I need to first lay the groundwork for what these games are. Just so no one gets lost when I start talking about mechanics, don't worry, I'm going to try and keep this brief. No hour-long history lessons just to figure out why people are taking out insurance policies on their fancy stacks of cardboard. That's not a joke, by the way. I once played at an LSG, which stands for a local game store. I should probably stop using acronyms if I'm trying to inform people of things. I once played at an LSG, still did it. I once played at a local game store in which a guy had a deck of cards that was at least worth $10,000. He told me he had insurance on it. Honest to God. I believed him. Do not play card games. Don't do it. Someone could just give you a brick of what is the equivalent value of a car and then just kill you with the most expensive cards you've ever seen in your life. So where did this all begin? Well, in 1991, Richard Garfield at Whitman College would go on to develop the initial prototypes and concepts for Magic the Gathering. Over the course of the next 2 years, after rigorous play testing, the game would fully take shape with 150 unique card designs ready to be released. And then it would be revealed at Gen Con and was a massive hit. Over the course of the next few years, the game would rake in millions of dollars, and this was intentional. To quote Peter Adkinson, CEO of Wizards of the Coast until 2001, If executed properly, the cards would make us millions. He said this before Magic the Gathering was even released. And of course, he was completely right. The game was, in many ways, designed to make boatloads of money. The business model wasn't just about using the mechanics of the cards to draw in more consumers, but also the pull of collectability that could be seen within baseball cards well over 100 years before Magic was even conceived. For although the purpose of having a card game as opposed to simply creating a board game was mostly to allow for an infinitely expanding range of options for players, it was also due to the fact that collectible cards had a proven track record of profitability throughout the years. The history of baseball cards go back to 1879, when a company called Allen and Ginter began printing cards in their cigarette packs depicting actresses, baseball players, Native American chiefs, boxers, national flags, or wild animals. Many of these cards were created specifically so smokers would just give them to their children. A little add-in just to get people to buy one particular brand of cigarettes over another. It would turn out that kids would actually really like baseball cards specifically, and over the course of the next 50 years, they would grow into something more of a specific targeted industry for both young men and children as well. Very famously, in 1909, Honus Wagner, a professional baseball player at the time, was so outraged that his card was being sold in cigarette packs, which children would want, therefore promoting smoking, he refused to allow them to release it, resulting in his specific card being so rare that in 2015, the T207 Honus Wagner would be sold for $7.5 million. Garfield and Atkinson knew exactly the type of value that was held within these collectible cards. As a result, they intentionally made the game a collectible game to drive up that valuation. So Magic released in 1993 and was a massive smash hit. It was so influential that it essentially created an entire genre of games. The TCG was made by Richard Garfield and Magic the Gathering in that year. After its creation, multiple TCGs would pop up over the years. Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, I've mentioned a few already. Without Magic the Gathering, there would be no TCG genre, and card games broadly probably wouldn't exist the same popular form that they now occupy. I already described the form that they're sold in, randomly distributed packs to essentially let people gamble on getting rare cards. I don't think I need to go over specifically why this is harmful, again, but it's not great. Certain people just have this inability to control themselves when given a Skinner box, and when you put a $sign in that Skinner box, it just ends in disaster most of the time. They're not quite slot machines, so that's good, but it's like comparing a firecracker to a car bomb. You probably don't want either going off in your hand. But even though that the game was designed to make a lot of money in a skeezy kind of way, it doesn't really explain why it's so expensive to play now. I mean, Pokemon has the exact same model, and yet it's significantly less expensive, a literal order of magnitude less expensive. So what's the difference? Why is one so much more costly than the other? It's not the price of the individual product, they cost about the same pound for pound. Each individual pack of cards is about the same price. In fact, arguably, Pokemon is significantly more expensive due to the rampancy of scalpers within its particular market. I mentioned before, people go nuts over sealed Pokemon product, and that's true. They really, really go crazy. It's basically impossible to find new sealed Pokemon product in any major retailer. It just gets completely cleared out. In fact, multiple retailers, at least in my area, simply don't carry Pokemon cards anymore because of scalpers, because they act like psychos. Meanwhile, Magic the Gathering, which is priced similarly to Pokemon, is still easily available in pretty much every major retailer. You can go down to a freaking Costco and get some Magic the Gathering cards. It's really quite ubiquitous. The difference kind of comes down to a number of factors that require me to split some hairs, so if you would excuse me getting a little bit into the nitty-gritty of these games, I'll go ahead and do that. As I mentioned before, Pokemon is a game that is attempting to emulate its video game counterpart. So every deck of Pokemon cards is going to contain 3 distinct things. It's going to contain Pokemon, it's going to contain trainer and item cards, and it's going to contain energies. Sidebar, pretty much every single TCG has some kind of resource system. Energies are the resource system of Pokemon. A normal deck will contain about 60 cards, and about 20 will be of each of one of these types. Magic the Gathering's theming is you are essentially taking the role of some powerful wizard, and your deck of cards is essentially your spell library. Every deck of cards in Magic the Gathering will usually contain about 60 cards, and like Pokemon, it has 3 distinct categories. Cards that are played that go onto the field and stay there, like summonable monsters or enchantments and artifacts, magic spells like a fireball or a lightning bolt, and then lands, which are the resource system of Magic the Gathering, similar to energies in Pokemon. Similar to Pokemon, each one of these card types takes up about 1/3 of the deck. There's some variance, and obviously I'm not getting into the finer details, but you get the idea. So far sounds relatively similar. Similar amounts of cards with similar levels of proportions for each individual type of card. Most decks are constructed from a pool of cards that are available at any given time during what is called a standard rotation. A standard rotation is essentially just whatever sets were released within 2 to 3 years. You can use those cards and not anything before then. In theory, this would allow for people to get into the game and not feel like they have to run around trying to find ancient printings of cards that haven't been put into circulation for like 10 years. It means that everything that you need is going to be printed and available then and there. It means that if you buy a set of Magic the Gathering cards or Pokemon cards off a Target store shelf, you could take those cards, build a deck, and play with other people with no issue. Again, very little difference. But here's where we start to see the first fissures, the first breaks in which these two games start to significantly diverge in the way that they do things. Pokemon has a standard rotation of about 2 years, while Magic the Gathering has a standard rotation of 3, which is actually a recent change. It used to have a standard rotation of 2, but decided to expand it outward to allow more people to use more cards. This doesn't seem like an inherently bad thing. 3 or 2 years is not a significant level of difference. Magic the Gathering sets from 3 years ago are still readily available. Problems begin when you start counting the amount of standard legal sets that come out in a single year. For Pokemon, it's about 3, maybe even 2 depending on what you consider to be a full set. For Magic the Gathering, the average was about 3 to 4. In recent years, however, it's expanded to 4, then 5, and now, in 2026, there are supposed to be 6 standard legal sets that will come out, bringing the total of standard legal sets to 16 by the end of 2026. Compare this to Pokemon, which only has, at any given time, maybe 4, 5, or 6 sets in a standard rotation. That means Magic has at least double the amount of sets in its standard rotation compared to Pokemon. If that sounds bad, don't worry, it's actually significantly worse than you think. The size of Pokemon sets range from about 150 to 200 cards on average, which means that a standard rotation at its height will be about 1,000 cards. Now that sounds like a lot, but then you take into consideration that a Magic the Gathering set, on average, will be about 300 cards, and then you multiply that by the amount of standard legal sets within one rotation, which at its height of 2026 will be about 5,000. Now you might think having a large amount of cards available for you to play with would mean that you would have less of a requirement to go out and buy specific cards, and therefore it would be cheaper, right? Well, no. In fact, the opposite happens. As it turns out, the more cards you have within a standard rotation, the more skewed individual decks become, the more tuned they can become. Suddenly, you have access to different pieces of tech that allows your deck to become significantly more powerful and significantly more specialized. For a recent example, Magic the Gathering Standard is being absolutely dominated by one deck, a VV Cauldron, essentially. A VV from Final Fantasy, like the Final Fantasy IX, This little dude? Yeah, no, he's destroying standard for Magic the Gathering. Most of the competitive decks are just running this particular list, or a variant of this particular list, because so many cards are available to the standard format that it's made this particular deck ridiculously dominant. It simply has access to far too many tools compared to any other archetype. It's also like $600 if you want to buy it in paper. It's pretty bad. And I don't mean to imply that large card pools will just result in a poorly balanced game. It is entirely possible that you can have a massive card pool and still have a perfectly balanced experience. It's very difficult, and the proof is kind of evident within Magic the Gathering standard. And I'm not trying to say that Pokemon with its smaller card pool is in any way more balanced, although I am saying that. I'm also not implicitly saying that it is balanced on its own. I don't play enough Pokemon to make that statement definitively. But it's not just the amount of cards that causes these issues. It's also about the way that the game is structured and how rarity comes into play within the distribution of regular card packs. The general rule of thumb for most trading card games is that when you open a pack of them, it contains mostly commons, some uncommons, and then one, maybe two rare cards depending upon the game. Both Pokemon and Magic the Gathering have a chance for some cards to be replaced with higher rarity versions. The best possible outcome for a pack of Pokemon cards would be about 3 rares, while the best outcome for a Magic the Gathering pack would be 4. There is also a 4th rarity in both games that shows up at an even scarcer frequency. Essentially, both games have an identical distribution of rarities within each individual pack, meaning that cards, in theory, will show up at the same rates. In most card games, rarity indicates power, and in Magic the Gathering this is explicitly true. Rare cards are simply better than their lower rarity counterparts. And Magic is not alone in using this system. Most card games tend to follow a trend of having higher rarity, more powerful cards fill out deck slots. Most competitive deck lists that you can see at any given card game will be filled with, in all likelihood, a giant stack of rares. But this is where Pokemon starts to significantly differ from both MTG and most other card games. Unlike its contemporaries, Pokemon instead has significantly more powerful low-rarity cards. 2 of the 3 major card types that exist within Pokemon are almost exclusively made up of commons and uncommons. Both energy cards and trainer cards and the item cards that go with them are incredibly inexpensive. You can get essentially a full playset of every single trainer and item card in the game for only a couple of bucks, essentially filling out 60% of your list without even spending more than $10. And what's more, most of the Pokemon cards that you would actually need to run in your deck are, again, of common and uncommon rarity. The reason for this is mostly down to the game's structure. It's attempting to emulate the games, which is of course known for having little tiny creatures that evolve into larger, stronger creatures. As a result, most of the cards that are incredibly powerful and rare require you to first play lower rarity, weaker cards first, and then layer those more powerful, rarer cards directly on top of them as a form of gameplay. As a result, the amount of actual rares that you're running in any given list of Pokemon cards is going to be incredibly sparse in comparison to Magic the Gathering or any other card game. You have to run commons and uncommons in large quantities, or the deck simply does not work. So why doesn't Magic the Gathering adopt this formula of making the game more accessible to more people by simply augmenting the power and rarity of cards? Well, it's an annoying question to answer, because there are solutions, and solutions that have cropped up over the course of many years that have kind of just never been fully utilized. You see, the reason that balancing based upon rarity exists at all is because Magic the Gathering sets are designed to be opened in the form of drafting. To open up a small number of packs and then use the contents of those packs to construct a deck and then battle people who did exactly the same. That means that you have to balance rare, common, and uncommon cards to be powerful in proportion to their rarity, as to not to throw off the balance of a draft pool. Pretty much every Magic the Gathering set is balanced with draft in mind. As a result, it can't deviate from the structure that has been used for the past 30 years. But like I said, there were opportunities to fix this problem. One of the potential solutions that cropped up was separating draft boosters and play boosters into two separate product SKUs. One was designed and made specifically for drafting, and the other was meant for people to open and add to their collections, with more rares and some fun extra bells and whistles. Wizards of the Coast could have utilized this as a way of making rare cards more available to normal people who weren't super invested within Magic the Gathering, lowering the price of entry for constructed formats while still allowing draft to exist in its separate form. But, of course, they didn't want to compromise powerful cards being used as a marketing gimmick to sell packs to people who wanted those cards. As a result, play boosters were only nominally better at getting you the cards that you wanted than draft boosters. And eventually, they just killed draft boosters altogether, resulting in play boosters being the only option that you had. In a cruel twist of fate, it meant that draft boosters would just be play boosters, and you'd have to draft through these strange clown shoes packs that had weird bonus sheets with crossover events and odd inclusions that would throw off the balance of any given draft pool that you might have with them. They also just cost more as well, which it's always great when a company just decides to charge you more for something and then remove the option for the cheaper thing. Super cool. But wait, Wizards did see the necessity to print more rare cards into existence, and that's why they created the Collector's Booster, which costs like 3 times as much. Wizards has essentially shown itself completely uninterested in trying to deal with the pricing issue of Magic the Gathering, and is, at least to my estimation, trying to capitalize off of it. Meanwhile, Pokemon has never had a draft format, and as a result, it is more than willing to print cards of any power level at any rarity. As a result, its game is just significantly more approachable for those who don't have as much money to spend. On top of this, the people who are opening packs are mostly collectors. Most of the people who end up buying sealed product are, in fact, scalpers who then sell it to collectors to open. These collectors are looking for incredibly beautiful and lavish treatments of various different cards at all different kinds of rarities. In fact, some of the most sought-after cards aren't even really very playable. They just look really nice, or depict characters or Pokemon that are popular within the fandom. This is one of the primary differences between Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. Pokemon being an incredibly beloved IP means that it has a secondary draw outside of mechanics. If you see a cool Charizard full art card, you don't need someone to explain to you what it does for it to be desirable. It's a cool Charizard. It's a neat dragon. Even if you don't even know what a Charizard is, you could at least aesthetically appreciate it much more than you can, well, let me actually give you an example. I think it can illustrate the point rather well. The most expensive Pokemon card that currently exists is a PSA 10 shadowless hollow foil Charizard from the base set of the original printing of the first set of Pokemon. Easy to understand. A child can look at that and go, that's a cool dragon. If you know what Pokemon is, then it's even more appealing. It has a nostalgia factor, and it has additional cultural implications beyond that. Compare it to the most expensive cards in Magic the Gathering. You have not a cool dragon or some immaculate, beautiful masterpiece. No. You have a flower, a couple pieces of jewelry, and the ground. These cards are expensive because they are rare and because they are powerful, not because they are fan favorites. No one cares about the story behind the Black Lotus. I don't even think there is any lore behind the Black Lotus. Magic simply doesn't occupy the same space as Pokemon. It isn't a cultural phenomenon, not in the way that Pokemon was. It's not something that has secondary emotions attached to it outside of its mechanics. It is a game that is meant to be played, and if you collect Magic the Gathering, you are in all likelihood someone who plays Magic the Gathering. It is honestly probable that if you collect Pokemon cards, you might not even know the rules of the game itself. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just so distinct from what Magic the Gathering ends up having in its player base. It means that no matter how much Magic tries to be Pokemon and give tons of treatments to all of its cards, it simply won't have the cultural cachet that Pokemon has. It can't have this beautiful treatment of a card that mechanically sucks. It just doesn't work. Meanwhile, Pokemon can print a card that is straight up cheeks, and it will still be worth a couple $100 because it has a cute anime girl on it. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But it is such a significant departure from the game that I primarily play. It means that the people who are being targeted to buy these incredibly expensive treatments are the same people who play the game. This is including the way that it's designed in its rarity, and the amount of sets there are, and the amount of cards that are in a set. It all compiles into this massive bonfire of cash that you have to throw your wallet onto if you want to meaningfully play the game, at least in a standard or even modern format. And despite all this, Magic is still the most popular card game that exists. How is that possible? How can anyone afford to play this game? If Standard is so ridiculously expensive, if Modern is similarly expensive, then how can anyone justify getting into a game like Magic the Gathering? Well, here's a little secret. I never said that anyone really plays Standard in Magic the Gathering. You see, I've tricked you. Magic the Gathering is not a popular game in Standard or Modern. There's a format that exists outside the bounds of Wizards of the Coast, outside of its rulings and tournaments. It is a game that is much more akin to a board game than a regular card game. You see, Magic the Gathering is a game with dozens of formats that are played by a non-insignificant amount of people, and one of them has grown to a point in which it has subsumed almost all of Magic's total player base into itself. This format is called Commander. Up until very recently, Commander as a format has been completely unregulated by Wizards of the Coast. Only a couple of years ago did it even start printing cards specifically for Commander, and even then, it didn't have control over the rules of Commander. There was a rules committee that was completely independent of Wizards of the Coast, and only, I think, last year did Wizards step in and say, hey, we're gonna do the rules now, because of some horrible drama that took place that I'm not going to get into right here. Needless to say, Wizards of the Coast, despite having control over the rules, can just still be safely ignored. It's not like they're gonna send the cops to your house. Except for that one time they did send the cops to someone's house. They did do that. Okay, Sienna, so what is this newfangled Commander rule set? What is this format that you're talking about? Well, I'm glad that you asked. It's a 4-player, multiplayer, free-for-all format in which you have a deck comprised of 100 completely unique cards, with some exceptions, being led by a legendary creature that acts as a main character of the deck, and then you just beat face against each other. It's essentially the Super Smash Bros. Of Magic the Gathering, and it is immensely popular. You can go into pretty much any game store and probably find a pod of people playing Commander at any given afternoon. It's pretty spectacular, and the primary reason it's so popular is that Wizards is relatively hands-off from it, and it's a casual format. You're not running tournaments for Commander, you're just playing with your friends. As a result, you can do whatever you want. Whatever rulings they make about Commander and the rules committee they have control over can be somewhat sidestepped by just talking to your playgroup and agreeing to do different things. It means that Wizards of the Coast is only informally in control of Commander, and in reality, the people in control are the community. It's also a legacy format, which means that every single card that has ever been printed in Magic's history is legal and can be used in Commander. Now, you might think that that would cause significant problems for the game's cost. I mean, if 3 years and 5,000 cards can make an unmitigated money hole, then how bad could it possibly be for a 10 to 20,000 card format like Commander? And at face value, yeah, it can be incredibly bad if you are trying to play the most powerful Commander cards. But because Commander is a 4-person format, and it's mostly about having a good time instead of winning, you don't actually have to build the most powerful deck. And additionally, if you do want to build the most powerful deck, you can just make your own cards. Proxying is a key to solving this locked door of cost. As it turns out, you can just print whatever cards you want on computer paper, slap them over a land, and suddenly you have a Gaia's Cradle, or a Black Lotus, but not Black Lotus. That card's banned in Commander. I don't know why I'm bringing this up. Fun fact, there are like 40 cards that are banned in Commander, so you can't technically use every card. This does not matter to the point I'm trying to make at all. Proxies are somewhat hotly debated, but in recent years, as Wizards has continued to print more and more stuff directly into both Standard, Modern, and Commander, the ability to get the cards that you want has kind of been very difficult. As a result, many local game stores, people who actually sell the product that you would be printing if you used proxies, tend to be completely fine with you proxying expensive cards. In fact, one of the most proxyable things in Magic the Gathering Commander is not big flashy spells or bombastic stompy creatures. No, it's the most basic components of the game. The resource cards. Remember how I mentioned that both games had resource cards? Magic has resource cards called lands. And for some godforsaken reason, most lands that are good go for like $20 to $50. That's right, the things that you just need to play the game, outside of straight up basics or like trash dual lands, are ridiculously expensive. The literal ground, that joke I made about the ground being expensive in Magic the Gathering, that's for real. It's not good, and it's probably one of the major reasons that proxying has become so popular. Now you're probably wondering, what does Wizards of the Coast think about all of this? And the answer is, they don't really care. In fact, their official statement on proxy cards is that do whatever you want as long as they're not in official tournaments. And since Commander is a casual format, which doesn't tend to have tournaments, and definitely doesn't have any officially sanctioned tournaments by Wizards of the Coast, there's no actual reason to not use proxies outside of personal preference. Some people don't like them. We don't have to talk about those people, but at least for me and the people who I play with, most people are very chill about the idea of using cards that you made yourself. It also adds to the level of tactility. They're not just cards that you buy anymore, they're ones that you make with your hands. There are a level of complete uniqueness to the things that go into your deck, not just because you're choosing to put certain game pieces into a deck that you construct, but also that the cards themselves are things that you crafted on your own. I think that, at least for me, adds to the personality that card games kind of inherently engender by being games that you have in some way the ability to be a little game designer with. Now you're also a graphic designer. I think that's pretty sick. And of course, I'm not necessarily overjoyed with the idea that I have to make the cards myself for the game to be affordable, but, you know, it's not the end of the world. I would much prefer for Magic the Gathering to become an affordable game like Pokemon is, but I don't think that it's really reasonable to assume that a major billion-dollar corporation like Wizards of the Coast and its owner Hasbro will ever budge and make the game more accessible to regular type people. It sucks, because I think that Magic the Gathering is one of the best games ever made, but as it stands, it's simply too expensive. If someone were to ask me if they should get into Magic the Gathering, I'd probably say no, and then add the caveat, if they're willing to play Commander, and then also make their own cards, then it's a tentative yes. But broadly speaking, no, you should not play Magic the Gathering. It, for the most part, is a giant money hole that will consume your heart. And ultimately, all card games are in some way attempting to manipulate you into buying something that you don't actually want. It's a terrible tragedy to me that such talented artists and game designers who do genuinely spectacular work have their, wagon hitched to this monstrous slot machine that is the way that card games make money. Because what I said in the beginning of this video is true. I truly love card games. Everything I said, I still stand by. But it's so difficult to look at the way that they're made and how they interact with people and not feel like that this garden was made with a snake built into it. That you're supposed to eat the tainted fruit and get kicked out. I feel like this analogy's run away from me, but it doesn't matter. I love card games. And they suck and you shouldn't play them. That's the title of the video. I'm going to title the video this. I'm deciding that now. Well, truly at the end of this, I feel like what I've really learned and what I hope I've conveyed to you isn't necessarily that card games are the worst thing in the world, even though I literally just said they were, but rather that Hasbro is an awful company and that you shouldn't give them money. Hey, thanks for watching this. This video I kind of threw together out of like the raw excitement of uploading the first one. I got a really good response from that first video, and it really means a lot if you ended up watching this and are now watching this video I'm putting out. I really have never had a lot of people look at the things that I've made before. Not that I've made a considerable amount of stuff, but I do appreciate it, and I appreciate you watching this one. I feel as though that at this point I'm too in, and I feel like I just want to keep going. I want to keep making stuff like this, and hopefully this is as good as the last one, because I know that there was a very positive response to it, and obviously this is more of a just kind of rant as opposed to a thoughtful commentary about a creator that I cared about in my youth, but you know, I hope you enjoyed it. And hey, if you enjoyed the video, maybe consider subscribing, because it seems like I'm gonna make more of these, and smash the like, smash that like, obliterate the like. Anyway, you have a good one.